You're tuned into the Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Zeno Pucks. Here are your hosts, Andy and Brian Matusi.
Welcome back to the Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast. I'm Andy. With me, as always, is my brother Brian. I'm just going to jump straight into it. A lot of you may notice Brian's setup looks a little bit different. I'm not sure what it is about.
I'm in a bomb shelter right now.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about when we have guests on that one of us ends up with internet issues, but it seems to never fail. But we're going to make it work. Brian's got a setup that works for now. So with that being said, I guess we'll bring on our guests. Everybody's been waiting for this. I've been getting a couple texts from people this week that were excited about it. Mark Mowers is back on the show, and that's huge for us. He was our first actual NHL guest, and since then, he's become a good friend of both of us. So I know I'm excited to have him back. I know you are as well. And we're going to get to a lot of questions we didn't ask last time because of the initial excitement of talking to an NHL alum. Now that the jitters are gone from that, I think it's going to be more of a casual, relaxed environment for you and me anyway. We can get those out of the way. With that being said, I think we could probably bring him in right now. What do you say? We will hold on a second. Okay, we will bring him in, and then this will be a little bit longer of a show. We will do our actual news updates after we're done talking to Mark, and we will go from there. So with that being said, he played for the Nashville Predators, the Detroit Red Wings, the Boston Bruins, and the Anaheim Ducks. He is currently a member of the Boston Bruins Alumni Association, and he is also an ambassador for the Warrior for Life Fund, as well as a pro scout for the Minnesota Wild. It is my privilege to bring back onto the show Mark Mowers. What's up, man?
What's going on, fellas?
Oh, man, it's good to have you back. We're both Brian's clapping.
No, it's good to be back. Good to see you guys' faces. I know we've been, we text here and there and whatnot, but it's always good to chat hockey with you guys.
Yeah, man, this is one of my favorite groups of people right here to chat hockey with, so I'm really excited about it. Brian, you all right over there, man? All right, he's staying real silent, so I just don't know if it's him or the internet.
No, it's just my internet's just I'm just tired of dealing with this crap with this company. I moved 6 hours from home and I still have the same problems all this time later.
I do think the last time when we did this, you had similar issues too. So, and that one went well. So I think we'll be okay. We'll be okay, even though you're a little behind.
Yeah. Well, yep, we'll manage.
The curse of Mark Mowers returns to Spectrum. All right. Well, Brian, I'm going to let you hop into this first because Brian has straight up told me he's got some pressing questions he's been wanting to ask you. So I'll let Brian hop into this first. Oh, he's way
so
behind.
I guess the big one is we just had the trade deadline pass, and I guess the thing I would want to know the most is what is a scout's typical day like on deadline day, because this is essentially a season's worth of work you've done to get to where you are, and now you gotta. I assume you spend a lot of time talking to your GM, like, hey, this guy looks good, this guy looks good, we could use him here or here. What's your start to finish look like on deadline day?
So I guess I'll start by saying that, I've done this now 12, 13 years, and it has evolved quite a bit from when I started in Montreal and, the actual deadline day. And you guys probably remember as well when I say this, that it used to be the day, maybe the day before there was some deals done, but the actual day in the morning, we had 6, you got up early, you were on the East Coast or on the West Coast, you got to get up earlier. And it was just kind of chaos. You were prepared, you knew what you wanted to do, but it was more chaos. The phone's ringing, this and that. And now it's just changed a bit because teams are doing deals earlier. They're doing them, could be a month before. They don't want to wait. They want to get the guy that they want. They want to get him into the team and get him settled. So he's not just coming in for the last, what it is, the last 6 weeks or whatever it is of the season after the deadline. But I will, I guess, talk more about how it is today than how it was. But you can tell just by what I said, it was a little bit better years ago because there was more that was going to happen within a 48-hour period. You know what I mean? So it's not, it's not that it's not exciting and this and that, but it's certainly not as action packed as it was. So, and every team does it a little different. Some teams don't they'll meet in the city that Boston, say Boston will meet in Boston and they'll be in their war room for 3 days or whatever it is. It's usually, I'd say 3 days before is when everybody kind of gets together. Our team, the way Billy likes to do it, we go where our team is. So this year we flew out to Vancouver because we were playing Vancouver on Friday night, the night after the deadline. And I think we got in there Tuesday or Wednesday, and you just every day basically go into a conference room or whatever, and you throw ideas around and this and that. This year was, I don't want to say boring, but it probably was the least active. We couldn't do much. We had no money. We had no roster spots.
All the injuries.
Yeah, so it was probably it was definitely the most uneventful, kind of boring trade deadline that I've been a part of. It's just the way everything lined up and whatnot. And we already got Nyquist. I think it was 3 weeks before or something like that. So that piece was filled. So it can be different for different teams. I mean, Seattle, look at them. They had to be, completely prepared and, making big deals, and other teams that were making big deals. It's so it just fluctuates year to year, but that's kind of how it rolls. You just, you wake up early, you grab your coffee, some breakfast, and then boom, right to the conference room or war room, and everybody opens their computers and you start thinking of ideas. If you're in a situation like that, like I said, this year we really weren't in that type of situation, so it was kind of low key.
Right on. Brian, do you have anything to say before I jump in? Because I have a trade deadline question that I've been dying to ask him.
No, you can go ahead.
All right. This has absolutely nothing to do with the Minnesota Wild and everything to do with the Boston Bruins, and I know you know right where I'm going with this. I want to hear your thoughts on the Brad Marchand trade to Florida.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really know. So everything that I'm saying is just speculation, or you hear stuff and this and that. I never thought they were going to trade him, only because I've heard of what a great leader he is, even though many people, including myself, when they named him captain, I was like, that's kind of strange. I just didn't see him as the captain type. But the more people that I've talked to and whatnot, especially with Bergeron gone and Krejci gone and Chara gone, like, from what I heard anyway, he's the glue. He was the glue in that room, even though the team was struggling and going through a transition period here. So I was shocked that they moved him. I really was. And then the more I heard about the money part of it, I didn't think they were that far off from what I heard too. Once again, it's all, I don't know exactly. It's just what I'm hearing. But so to answer your question, I think at the end of the day, he wanted out. He wanted to go win. He wanted to go win, and he maybe saw the writing on the wall of what's happening with the Bruins organization. How it just seems like it's a little chaotic and not, maybe who knows where it's going, I guess, as a Bruins fan, so that's my opinion on it. I just feel like if he really wanted to stay and they weren't that far off with money, he would have made it, he would have made it work. So that's where I go with it.
That's kind of okay. So we're kind of on the same page there. I had initially heard, now this was through Elliot Friedman. I heard this. So usually when he says something, I tend to take it as what actually happened.
Yeah.
That's not always the case, but he's a reliable source. He's arguably the best NHL insider out there right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he had said that, and I don't know how true, but apparently Brad and the Bruins were off. They were only about $1 million apart. Mm-hmm. But my understanding is that he told the Bruins, hey, I'm willing to move a little bit, but I need you guys to move a little bit. And it seems like there was some kind of disagreement in there. Mm-hmm. As a Bruins fan, it sucks, but as a guy who also likes the Panthers, it's great. So it was kind of a win-lose, but it's just frustrating from the Bruins perspective of things, just because, like you said, you don't know what direction this team is going right now. And now he was the only member left on that team who was on the 2011 Cup team.
Mhm.
And so everybody from that era of Bruins hockey is gone now.
Yeah.
So it's just really weird. And I remember McAvoy and Pasta were down bad. I saw their Instagram post when they announced the trade.
Yeah.
Even Marchand did during his first interview or press interview. He was choking up.
Mhm.
I think deep down he ultimately wanted to be a Bruin forever. I think that's very obvious. But you kind of got to do what's best for you at that point, especially this late in your career. He's got a good opportunity to go win a cup with Florida, assuming Florida runs it back.
Yeah.
But I was just curious because I mean, while you are employed by the Minnesota Wild, you are a member of the Bruins alumni, and I'm sure. Have you ever met Marchand? I've got to assume you have. Okay.
He actually the Warrior for Life game that we played in December.
Yeah.
At Warrior at their practice facility.
Yeah.
He was there that day. I don't know if he came in for something, but he jumped behind the bench and he was coaching. He was
nice.
He was coaching us. So he had a great time. And that's the first time I actually got to talk to him a little bit. And
nice.
Once again, as an outsider, and I should know this more, I guess I should have known it, but like he's just a normal guy, like everybody wants to kill him, because of the way he plays on the ice. But and he definitely did some things over his career. I would hope he would want to take them back.
Yeah.
AKA the licking scene and all that stuff. But you know what? He was younger and he's matured. And but I was really impressed with him, the way he was he was a goofy guy, but also friendly and very respectful and whatnot. So he definitely gained my approval as just an individual. 1,000% getting to meet him that day. So
nice.
Yeah. I think you're probably spot on. I'm just and who knows what's going to happen this summer either. By the way, I mean,
yeah. Well, that was my other thing is that part of me expects that he ends back up in Boston in the off season. I could very well, maybe for all we know, maybe they were like, all right, hey, we'll send you to Florida right now. You got a chance at a cup. Go for it, and then we'll talk to you in the summer.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's weird how that doesn't happen that often where you think it would. These rentals, the rental players, they go and you're like, oh, he's just going to re-sign back. But I mean, I try to think of the guys that actually did it, and it doesn't happen that often.
Right,
it just doesn't.
And even if they wanted to re-sign him, if I'm correct, I don't think the Panthers are going to have the room to re-sign him or extend him, sign him in free agency. So
probably depends on what they. It's a good point. It is a good point, and like you said, it could be in the drawer right now that he's, they have a deal already worked out. Who knows? You just don't know. But.
It's I was talking to my wife about this too. It doesn't seem real seeing him in a Panthers jersey.
It's strange.
It's weird.
Like especially when he sets up a game-winning goal.
I know.
Yeah. A Stamkos in a Preds jersey, that's still weird to me. It's been a weird year.
Yeah.
So
Rantanen in a Dallas jersey.
Yeah. Rantanen in Dallas. Dude,
yeah, it's been this stuff doesn't happen a lot. Really?
No, it doesn't. But I think we're in.
It may start happening more. I mean, I was talking to somebody last night, and we were talking about the St. Louis with the offer sheets on the two young kids, and look at how it's worked out for them. I mean, and Edmonton's missing those kids. They're missing them. So it's like I could see this summer, just because now it took one GM to have some guts and just say, you know what, it's not illegal. Like, why would we not try to get a restricted free agent?
Yeah.
So I could see more happening this summer, and I hope it does, because it'll add excitement to everything, and it'll show who's loyal to who, and could be a lot of good talking points if that happens.
Absolutely. Hopefully we don't have any repeats of the Joe Sakic incident in the 90s where they had to go release Air Force One to pay to sign Joe Sakic. So
yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited for that. Brian, I'm sorry I took so long with that. I just wanted to ask him that because he's sort of within the Bruins organization, so I had to get his opinion.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. I'm so delayed here too that I'm like, I
Yeah.
almost don't want to chime in because I'm like, I don't want it to cut the conversation at the wrong point and have it play back like hell. So I'm like, while you guys are going, I'm like, let me brew up some thoughts and kind of share it all at once. But I briefly mentioned the Randon trade, Mark, but I mean, truly to see a superstar player like that move twice in the same season, I mean, I have to imagine the Avalanche front office is not entirely thrilled that one of the best players in the world went from being on their roster to being on Dallas's roster.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I don't know, I don't know who they were talking to about where they could move him, where the possibilities were from Colorado, but you would think sending sending him to the East was, a priority. And yeah, once again, I mean, I don't know the last time that's happened. I mean, not since I've been scouting has a star player, been traded and not stuck with that team for at least through the rest of that season. But and more, to be honest. I mean, most of the time these guys, once again, they kind of negotiate a deal. They know what's going to happen, whether it's legal or not. But yeah, it's mind-boggling. But yeah, it kind of backfired in that sense.
I
Yeah,
do agree.
and I think another thing, real quick, is just to me is like, you see the contract he signs too, and it really looks odd as how is Colorado not able to match that number? And again, Colorado got bounced out of the playoffs last year on an OT winner by Matt Duchene, who used to play for them. Now they're almost guaranteed to have a first round date with Dallas again, and now they're gonna again face Duchene. They're gonna face Randon, and now again, I mean, you have to be kind of shaking in your boots a little bit if you're involved with the Avalanche, like, oh God, what did we get ourselves into now? And you mentioned it too. Your priority is to get this guy out of your conference so you don't have to face him. And now you're likely going up against him in round one. I can't imagine the level of panic. I mean, I know Colorado's a really great team. I mean, they've been outstanding this year, but that's one that really feels like it could come back to really bite them in the ass.
Yeah, and and I keep saying this, but it's like we're not in the room, we're not in the office, we don't know exactly what happened. But if you look at the deals that the number that we heard, anyways, that Colorado was offering to him, and he said, you know what, I want more than that, and then he goes to Carolina, and then Carolina threw a number probably at him too, and he's like, no, I'm not. And then he goes to Dallas, and Dallas throws kind of the same. I think it's pretty close to what Colorado was offering in the beginning. So at some point, Rantanen's probably like, okay, I guess I'm not going to get the whatever 13, 14 million or whatever it may be. I like it here. It's warm. There's no taxes, and whatever. So and he's going to be insulated with other good young players, and so he probably just said, you know what, what's the point? I might as well get this done. That's the way I took it.
That's valid. Brian, I don't know how behind you are, so I'm trying hard not to cut you off either. This literally reminds me of when I was in Afghanistan and I'd call home and I'd say something and then wait like 12 seconds for a response. This is exactly what that reminds me of. And we're literally, I think, how far do you live from me? Like 2 miles?
Something like that. It's not very far.
Yeah. So, but I agree. I think too, when he was, before they traded him from Carolina to Dallas, I recall Fried saying that Rantanen told Rod Brindamore, there's 4 teams I want to sign with, and you're not one of them. Mm-hmm. That's kind of I mean, one, I don't blame him. We've often talked about on this show about how Carolina's not a team that can get it done. And I won't believe that they're capable of that until they win a cup. But I think that's kind of a low blow if you're Carolina. That's got to hurt a little bit. But at the same time, when you have a player of that caliber, you've got to fight a little bit harder to make him want to stay there. And I know that's easier said than done. But now, again, if you're Colorado too, now he's on your division rival. I think that's for both Colorado and Carolina. That's pretty bad.
Yeah, and listen, I mean, I can't speak for I don't want to speak for the Carolina management or whatever, but like, if I am a GM, I am not making a deal sending my, one of my superstar players and Marty Netchis out to another team without knowing that I can sign this guy. Like, so if they had no clue that if they had no clue that he really wasn't going to sign with them, like to me, it was a big mistake, you know. And people are defending Eric Tulsky, I think it's his name, how you say his name, but you know, saying whatever, and he did a great job getting Stankoven back and this and that, but at the end of the day, like I would have never ever, I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have done it.
That's where I'm at. I would have tried to hold on to him. But I mean, it is what it is too. I don't know. Yeah. I just feel like with Rantanen, if it's me, I'm fighting like hell to keep him. But
yeah, but if he comes straight out and says that, like 4 teams, like what are you gonna do?
Yeah. So I mean, it's tough.
Yeah. Well, Brian, and truthfully, the thing that really bothers me with this is that from the Carolina side, again, maybe he doesn't want to sign with you, but for the love of God, for a team that can't score in the playoffs, you get one of the most prolific playoff scorers of this generation, and you give him up. And again, Stankoven's a really good player. I think he really is going to be good. But that's not the issue. Again, you have one of the most prolific playoff goal scorers in the last 10 years, and you're like, you know what? We must not want to win that bad because you ship him out. And I know it's all about the return and blah, blah, blah. But truly, again, this group has been doing the same thing for 5 years in the playoffs. I would think it would be a little tiresome if I were them.
Well, but it's not all about the return. It's just you could end up, and I understand what you're saying, but you could end up with nothing. You can end up with nothing, and you're losing Rantanen off your team. You're losing Marty Necas off your team. Those are 2 superstars. Like Marty Necas is like he's like a mini McKinnon, really. If I don't know how much you get to see him play, but like they're very similar, dancing around, and they're quick, and you know, like so. If they would have lost both of those players, like for me, someone's getting fired. You can't do it. You can't. I mean, those are 2 huge assets. So once they found out they couldn't sign him, they kind of had to trade him. They basically they didn't have to, but like once again, if Rantanen's gone in the summertime, like I'm not saying you're starting over because you still have Aho and you got some good players, but you're losing 2 superstars. So
yeah. So Brian, you don't have anything to say, do you? Because I'm going to kind of.
Just one real quick thing was, again, you mentioned losing the star players. I mean, and this was on the heels of them losing Pesce and Shea on the back end during the offseason. So it's a team that's seen a little regression anyways. And then, as you mentioned, now you lose Necas and again lose Rantanen. So it is a little, you know, troubling to see. Again, Tulsky first year as a GM, but it's a little troubling to see the names that have left already in his tenure and the ways that those players have left.
Yeah. Yep. Fair.
All right. So one thing I have to do, when we had you on last season, I had a buddy of mine who heard you were coming on, and there was a question he wanted me to ask you, and I just totally forgot. So I'm going to make it up to him. And it's nothing like, it's not Mark Mowers specific. It's just something that as a player you would do. He was curious as to, as an active player in the NHL, what your like daily workout and diet like routine is like when you're a professional. He's a huge fitness guy, so he was just curious.
Yeah. My first thought when you just said that is every player is different.
Okay.
So every player has a different body type, right? So what I had to do was a little bit different, or could be a lot different than a guy that's 6'2", 220. Okay, so I'll say like a big bone guy. I'm not saying he's overweight or whatever, but those guys tend to, they can't eat the pizza and the ice cream or whatever, and if they do, they're going to put on pounds during the season. Like for me, and I'll just speak on what I did, but I almost had to eat as many calories as I could during a season because I just couldn't keep weight on. Like I would start at 185, 188. By the end, I was 172. It was like,
oh shit.
Yeah, I looked sick at the end of the year. Like if I played in the playoffs, it was crazy. And I would try everything. I would try all this protein powder, but part of it is that, and this goes to your question about working out, is like in the summer, you put so much time into on the bike and on the track and doing sprints and lifting weights 4 times a week, and you're doing heavy weights, you're doing a lot of, especially for me, my legs are like this. They're, I got chicken legs, and I'm just trying to add a little girth to these things. And if I don't do squats like throughout the whole season, you slowly just, not atrophy, but it's like, that's just what happens. It's just skating part of it doesn't allow for me to keep, like, I don't want to use girth too much. That's a weird word.
Yeah.
but anyway,
that's fair.
But anyways, yeah, that's kind of how it was for me. So like in the summertime, you go hard for whatever, 3 months, you're doing heavy weights, then you hit the season. Yeah. And that's where it becomes very, very difficult. Like guys try, and I tried like to work out after games or the next day, but you're tired, you're traveling, you're here or there. So there's, your workouts, the weights that you're doing during workout, they just go from here, way down. Right. So like, I could not keep the mass, upper body, lower body, whatever it was. And eventually your body just kind of breaks down a little bit, and you just try as hard as you can to maintain it as best you can. It's really how it is. And I don't know if that answered all your questions, but for me, it brings back like memories of being like, man, I wish I could have worked out more or whatever, but you're tired. It's such a grind. So,
well, I think that brings good insight as to how different everybody is. Like each body type is completely different. So you can't narrow down the same workout plan to every single person either. So I think that's good.
Exactly. And you can throw in like skating too, like guys that are bigger and they need, they don't have the quick twitch, right? So they might do like squat jumps or with lighter weight, and like just getting explosiveness so they can get, try to develop some of that quick twitch. Where me, I had it. I just needed more power. I needed more base, not to get knocked off pucks. And you know what I mean? So upper body, I play with guys that they were, just naturally strong upper body. They never did they didn't do any bench press. They didn't do any pull-ups. They didn't do it because they just had it.
Right.
Me, I'm trying to do everything possible to, to add a half inch to my biceps. So
yeah,
just the way it was.
Oh man, see, and I was like, especially that these are two different animals. Obviously, I would argue professional athletes are far more in shape than I was in the military. But even in the military, I was the complete opposite, where I had more trouble trying to maintain weight or lose the weight than I did. Yeah. Like I had to be super restrictive on what I ate because anything, if I even looked at food the wrong way, I was gaining weight. Yeah. So, but in that sense, it was also fairly easy for me to put on muscle, especially like while I was deployed. And that when all you have to do is work out or call home, that's that's it.
No, so, for sure. Yeah.
But that's interesting. I think that's actually a great response, because it really, like I said, like you said, you can't narrow it down to just everybody as a whole. It's each person individually.
Yeah, and you have to know what you need, basically. And it's a lot. It's evolved so much now with nutritionists and all the stuff they have and to help you out. And but I still think the smaller guys that, under sub 6 feet, thinner guys, 185, 170. I mean, there's some tiny guys in the league now. That are just dynamic players, but I'd imagine that they're going through the same thing that I went through. But then there's the other part of it. I remember one year I got over 190, and I was like, oh my God, this is going to be awesome. Got over 190 pounds, and I remember training camp, I was like, what? I couldn't skate. So I'm not saying I couldn't skate, but I didn't have that explosiveness and the speed, and I was like, what did I do? I could tell. So there's a point where you don't want to go over, so it took me I was probably like year 5 or year 4 or 5, something like that. I did it, and I was excited. And then I was like, not only did I slow down a little bit, like I was like too bulky, right? Couldn't handle as well. So that's another thing that goes into it, where you don't want to do too much. You got to just figure it out within your own body type.
So there's 100% of science to it then.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Bob, I know you'll be listening to this, so sorry it took me a year to ask him your question, but better late than never, I always say.
One more thing I want to mention too on the on the making weight and the nutrition thing. Anytime I hear stories about this, I always think back to the late Johnny Gaudreau, and I believe it was at the draft combine. He was so light that he stuffed his pants with bags of pucks to make himself look like he weighed more because he didn't want to be seen as too small. It's one of my favorite stories.
Yeah. Guys would do that. I may have done a little bit of that because at training camp, I mean, it's a big thing. It's one, and we still do it now as scouts. It's like, you look, how big is that guy? You know what I mean? And it's just, it doesn't even matter, 6'3", but he's 170 pounds. Like, it just puts a little bit of a negative mark on somebody, that like,
Right.
well, how are they going to survive the NHL season or whatever? So, but you're absolutely right. He's not the only one that did that, for sure.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
I just love those stories, and I think to like guys like on the Wild, like Marco Rossi and Matt Zuccarello are perfect examples of guys like this, where they're 5'8" and $165 or whatever, and you're like, man, that's a little guy. But again, they're dynamic players. They have great skating ability. They have great hands, so they can create these plays without having to dig in too hard on the forecheck like a Marcus Foligno, who's 6'4", 220 or whatever. They find ways to be creative, but it's so crazy to see the different body types in the league and how everybody gets to where they are with their diet and their conditioning. Because like you said, everybody's just so different. So it's always fascinating to hear those kind of stories.
I got to get on that Zdeno Chara diet and workout program because that dude is a unit. So I'm also an entire foot shorter than him, so that doesn't help. But
he does triathlons like every month. He's a machine. He is a machine.
I not sound lazy, but it'll be a pretty cold day in hell before you see me doing a triathlon. So but before we move on and before I kind of let Brian go back into his thing, I want to give you the opportunity. Obviously, we're huge fans of the Warrior for Life Fund on this show. I've talked to Jamie Pastor quite a bit. I hope I'm saying his name right.
Yeah.
I've talked to him quite a bit. We're trying to make something work to where we can do some type of collaboration together because that'd be really cool. And we love Warrior for Life. Obviously, me being a veteran, I am a huge fan.
Mm-hmm.
And we make it a point to talk about them almost every episode on this show.
Yeah.
But I feel like because you're an ambassador for them, I'm going to pawn that responsibility off on you today. So,
I don't know how much you want me to get back into it again, but to sum it up, it's putting hockey with military, and we're getting guys on the ice, and whether it's in Virginia Beach, and now it's just picking up steam, and I always say this last I shouldn't. But the sled hockey players down in Virginia Beach, it's a huge part of it too. I've been down there with the kids on the ice. I've gotten in one of those sleds, and it's amazing, and it's heartwarming, and it's humbling to jump on the ice with those kids and them knowing that I played for the Bruins 100 years ago, but it doesn't matter to them, and the smiles they have on their faces. And so, it's just, for me, that's, as this thing is picking up steam and it's growing, that part of it still to me is one that I love, and it hits home. And every year I enjoy going down to Virginia Beach and getting on the ice with those kids. So I did not want to forget that. But as far as the bigger program, it is evolving. The NHL is involved now. The NHL Foundation, they're giving us some funds to get some military guys to different areas that we're playing games in. We're as you know, we do a game in Boston in November, late November, early December. I think it's early December. We've done one, I think, 2 years now in San Diego in August, and we're adding one this year, and we're flying the guys out to Montana. Kevin Miller from the Bruins, he lives out there now, and he's kind of organized this. So we're going to get some military guys out there and have a day of, I don't know if we're doing a 3-on-3 tournament or what we're doing, but we're doing a whole day tournament with these guys. So we'll fly them out there and put them up, and the next day go to a rodeo and stuff and have some fun with,
Nice.
So it is evolving. Sometimes I think, the president there, Ryan Crowley, he's probably like, what, this is what I wanted, but it's happening so fast. So it's, he's overwhelmed at times, but the support's been great. And like I said, getting the NHL involved, because there are a lot of groups out there and foundations and whatnot that are starting more and more of this stuff with getting sports with the military, and whether it's active or retired, and but getting them on our side and under, they understand it, they get it, and with their help, it's only going to assist us with stuff down at the arena in Virginia Beach for the local military down there. But it's spreading now, where I think we're gonna hopefully get more stuff across the country, and it's been really great. It really has.
I gotta say, it's just an all-around great organization, and I mean, we're grateful. I'm grateful to them just for what they do for veterans, but I'm also grateful to them because it's afforded us the opportunity to have you on the show. Also, shout out to Bob Pizzini and Andrew Alberts. Also had them on the show.
Yeah,
just great people. Always fun to talk hockey with, and they're truly committed to what they do. I mean, you as well. I can't say enough good things about Warrior for Life, and it's nice to know that there's somebody out there having our backs when it feels like nobody does at a very vulnerable time in your post-military life. I think that's the best way to put it.
Yep. We just played in a game. I think it was a game to raise some money for breast cancer, and I've got to know this kid, Eric Hansen, and he's up in Maine, and he's got his own little team starting up in Maine, and they're doing kind of a similar thing. It's much smaller,
right?
But he's got it going. And I said, you know what, like what you're doing, and is not much different than what happened with Ryan Crowley down in Virginia Beach 6-7 years ago. It's like, we're getting these contacts too in different areas, and I know in Washington D.C., I believe, like, the Army is now playing Ryan Crowley's team, against Navy. So there's more games going on like that. So it really is a cool thing, and it does take some time. But like you said, at least whether it's you or anybody else listening, or there are good-hearted people out there that we're trying to whatever. Like I said before, even if you never skated, we're getting you on the ice. If you have skated. If you have skated and you're more competitive, we're allowed, we're putting you in a position to play against ex-NHL players, and, whatever that may do to help the quality of life, or, in the present or the future. That's basically the goal. So.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
And also shout out Kevin Miller, my favorite Bruins defenseman of all time. I love that he's involved in Warrior for Life. Just an all around. I don't know him personally, but everything I've heard, he's a great guy.
Solid.
I miss having him. I miss having him on the Bruins.
Yeah.
Those were the good old days. So
solid. And him and Marchand are pretty tight.
They got the March and Milko.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Who knows? Maybe, maybe when Marshy decides to retire, he can come on board with us, and that'll only help. So
that'd be great. I mean, those are all great guys, and I mean, they've already done so much off the ice just to give back to their community. So the fact that they continue to look for other ways to do so is just incredible. And everything you guys do, I would never be able to put into words how appreciated it is. So
great. Good.
So if you're watching or listening to this and you want to help out the Warrior for Life Fund, you can make a donation. Head over to www.warriorforlifefund.org and make your donation today. Bry guy, go ahead.
Well, I think the big thing that we really haven't talked about yet, and I mean, you played in the league against him plenty of times, I'm sure now.
Oh boy.
The Alex Ovechkin goal chase is on. We are 6 away from history. What are your thoughts on watching what was once a seemingly unbreakable record be on the be very close to being broken?
Yeah, I mean, I'm amazed. I would have never thought at the beginning of this year that he would have gotten not close, but I thought maybe he'd be 25 away and have another year and get it next year. And I think someone even asked me in December, they were like, what do you think? I was like, no way. Like, it's not possible, Well, for two reasons. One, I didn't think Washington was going to keep the momentum that they've kept, but their team is a well-oiled machine. And, in Ovi's not the player that he once was. Like, he just doesn't get in on the forecheck and hit guys as much as he did, and he doesn't have the puck as much. And, but the other guys around him, he's insulated so well, and every single player on that team is better than they were last year. So it's kudos to Coach Carey there. He's done an unbelievable job with that group. But so now, he's everybody wants him to do it this year, obviously, and I don't see how he's not. What has he got? 9? Is it 9 games left? About
they have 10 games left
and 6 goals to go.
God, it's like everybody's rooting for him, and I hope he gets it, and it's amazing, and because it's you still have to shoot the puck and you still have to get open, and he's doing both of those, and obviously he's adding another level of excitement to the NHL season. I mean, you got the playoffs everybody wants to get to, but the dog days of the season, and now people are I think he's in Boston tomorrow night, or is it tonight? I don't know.
Let me look. Because now I got to know.
No, it's Tuesday. Maybe it's Tuesday. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So, that place will be sold out buzzing just because of one guy, So.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad I'm not a fan trying to pay to get into one of those games right now, because I can only imagine ticket prices for any game Ovi's in right now are stupid.
I'll tell you this, too, that Washington was in Minnesota the other night, and I was watching the broadcast, and there was a lot of red jerseys in that crowd, and they weren't the old wild Christmas jerseys. They were Washington Capitals. Red.
Yeah. That was like the other night when the Jets posted 15,000 something strong, but then if you look at the crowd, half of them were Washington Capitals fans. I was like, yeah, that's because of the other team that's in your building right now. Not saying the Jets don't sell out, but
yeah, I know. And I don't know. I as you just brought up Ovechkin, I was like, man, I don't know if I told you guys this story, and I don't know if I should tell the story, but now that I just brought it up, I'm going to tell it.
All right.
This is my I don't even know how to start it or picture it for you guys. But so one of my least favorite scouting moments was what year did they win the Cup?
The Caps 2018.
Okay, 2018. So beginning of 2018, Washington's one of my teams. And I've been scouting for 6 years now, 7 years or whatever, or about that. But anyways, I go to Washington, and when you go to Washington as a scout, you get to go downstairs and you basically walk by the locker room where the guys are playing soccer and whatnot. Right. So I look to my left, they're playing soccer, and I see Ovechkin, and he doesn't know me or whatever. So it's no big deal. But going back to your workout and nutrition stuff, I was like, oh my God, like he looked disgusted. Like he did not look like a professional athlete. He looked very heavy. I'll just keep it at that. He looked very heavy. And that particular game, he just wasn't involved. He looked lazy kind of, and whatever. It was the beginning of the season. So I have to go back and write a report after the game. And in my report, I wrote, I was shocked to see, Ovi looks out of shape and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't see the Capitals ever winning a Stanley Cup with this guy.
Whoops. Oh, man.
Fast forward 6 months. And he's jumping in the fountains. Remember, he was jumping in the fountains.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
he was jumping in the fountains, sleeping with it.
Yeah,
like
whatever. So it wasn't a great, it's a funny story, but
you manifested Ovechkin and the Capitals winning the Stanley Cup. It was you. I think I should point out too, I'm kind of stupid for this one, especially because I can't stand them now, but I was actually rooting for Vegas in that Cup final. And now I'm looking back, I'm like, no, I'm glad the Caps won it. But
yeah,
that's interesting because I've always thought that Ovi kind of looks, I don't even know that out of shape is the right word. It's just not like I would expect a professional athlete to look. I've always
kind of like Phil Kessel.
Yes. Yeah. It's very similar. Similar. Yeah, exactly.
And Phil could skate like a motherfucker too. He was so fast. You wouldn't think a guy that was shaped like a pear would be able to fly like that, but he did.
You're right. It does go to show that not everybody, you don't have to. And I have another theory about that too, with the lifting and injuries and stuff, how everybody does all this core stuff to be so strong and tight in their core or whatever. Like the guys back in the day, like in the 70s, 80s, they didn't hardly ever work out at all, and they were never injured unless they had they blocked a shot and broke a bone or whatever. Now we're so wound up tight, guys. You can't stay healthy. Your team isn't healthy for 2 weeks straight. A guy's out every week. So I do think there's something to be said where the fibers of everything with your muscle and whatever is, it can only handle so much in the sport of hockey. But that's another conversation. But good for those guys. Didn't waste all the time in the gym, and they could still score 50 goals a season.
Smoking cigarettes in the locker room between periods, whatnot. I don't know if that's a thing that still happens today, but I sure as hell know it used to back in the day.
Yeah, it did, but no, it doesn't. Not anymore.
Anymore. To me, that I always thought, I was like, how do you smoke cigarettes and then have the cardio capability to go play a hockey game? I'm just like,
I know. Mind-boggling.
Sounds horrible to me.
Yeah.
Brian, did you want to continue?
No, I was just mostly curious to hear his thoughts on Ovi's goal chase. But I do think it's funny that your scouting report was that essentially he's looking pretty tired and looking like it's probably never going to happen with Washington. But I also don't think you were alone in that mindset, because I think after all those exits against the Penguins and against the Rangers, and it just never felt like it was going to happen with that group, and all the President's trophies they won that ended up with them going nowhere. And the first season where it really felt like they weren't going to do it was that 2017-18 season, and they sure as shit did. So it's just weird how sports work.
No, exactly. You're exactly right. That there was more than just him looking like that. You're right. It was the trend of like, they just can't get it done. But
it also to me never felt like Braden Holtby was going to be able to string those great seasons together. It felt like there was going to be a dip eventually, and boy, did he ever have a hell of a playoff run for them too.
I know. But Andy, to your point about everybody in Minnesota, like, did you see how at the end of the game his teammates were leaving the ice and he pulled them back on the ice? For Marc-Andre Fleury? Like, that's a guy, like, it just shows how much he's matured, you know what I mean? And he really realizes what the big picture is all about. And, that was awesome.
Absolutely. And I mean, I should point out, I've always loved Ovi anyway. I think he is a good leader. I mean, obviously, no question, he's a phenomenal player.
Yeah.
But he's a great leader, and it sounds like he's a good guy on and off the ice too. So, but that does speak volumes, and I thought that was pretty cool that he did that, especially given the history between Marc-Andre Fleury and Ovechkin. I just thought that was a really cool gesture.
Yep.
So one thing I do have to ask your opinion on, and this was something Brian and I were going to talk later in the show, but I'm just going over show notes too, and some of these things I want your opinion on legitimately. One thing being, the NHL has discussed ditching the All-Star game, which I've been an advocate of forever. Yes. I can't stand the All-Star game. What do you think about that as a former player? I don't know how players in general might feel about it, but to me, the general consensus is it's kind of a waste of time. And there's obvious, as the Four Nations face-off just showed, there's way better things we could be doing.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. And I think, I wouldn't say it's a waste of, it's hard to say it's a waste of time, because there's people that get to go to those games, kids that get to go to those games, that, you know what I mean, that they're starstruck and this and that. But for me, it's more about the grind of the season. And, guys don't want to go because they're so tired and they finally get 3 days off or whatever. Now, if you're throwing in the Four Nations Cup, that doesn't give you any rest, because as you've seen, a lot of the players that played in those games, especially played a lot in those games, their game in the NHL games dipped. A lot of them, they're just tired, which is understandable. So as far as my argument of why I wouldn't want it, it may not come to fruition as far as the guys actually getting 3 or 4 days off to just have a little break, refresh, and hit the stretch run. But I think if they're going to do it, I would go to a younger game type thing, like the newer kids in the league, and something like that, which maybe still isn't fair, because when you're a younger guy, you're adjusting to the grind of the season, and it's really hard. So I don't know what the perfect answer is. I just know that these veteran guys are not going to want to go. They're not.
That makes sense to me, and I kind of agree with it. I will say I agree to the point where I think a break in the season is 100% a necessity. These guys are out there playing 110% every night and just wearing themselves thin. You need that break mid-season for everybody, not just physically, but like mentally as well. You just need a break.
Or maybe do something in Florida. Maybe do something where your family gets to go down to Florida and I don't know, have just a skills competition or something for the young kids. Now, I still think the older guys, they're not going to want to do it,
Right.
But for the young guns or something, I don't know, something like that where it's just fun and low key, and they can still get away and hang out on the beach for a couple days, or I don't know. I'm sure other people have some ideas, but.
No, I'm always interested to just hear everybody's opinion on it because I've just been an advocate of like I don't waste my time watching the All-Star game. It's just mostly because I just don't find it entertaining because they're just out there lobbing the puck around. I mean, nobody's trying because it's the All-Star game. You don't want to risk getting hurt.
Right.
And I guess the Four Nations is a good example of that. Like you look at guys like Kachuk, who's still out right now. He's on LTIR. He got hurt. Larkin's game has slowed down since the Four Nations face-off, and he was red hot for USA. McAvoy's hurt, so
even our guy Faber, he just looked a little tired when he got back, and
those guys played their asses off for that.
They threw everything into that thing, and it's almost like Game 7 of the Stanley Cup. Like they just I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the solution is for the Four Nations. I don't know. They've talked about doing that earlier in training camp, but then then the guys, same thing. You're going to hit the beginning of the season, the guys are going to be lackadaisical. So I don't know, but I agree 100%. See you later with the All-Star game.
All right. I'm glad we're on the same page with that. But again, you brought up some good points with that. Brian, anything to add or ask?
No, just real quick, since you mentioned Brock Faber, and Anthony LaPanta talks about this on Wild broadcasts all the time, but it is just incredible how quickly and effectively Brock Faber adapted to the NHL game. He came in with the team his first season after playing at Minnesota for college hockey. He played like 2 games to end the regular season, jumped into the playoffs, and played like half an hour a night every game, even though they lost in round 1. I mean, since that point, he's just getting better and better every day. And as a Wild fan, I start to see these extreme expectations people are going to have for like a Zev Bouillon who's supposed to be coming in. And I just worry people are going to harp on the kid because he may not come in and be what Brock Faber is to a team. I mean, he's just such a unicorn in my eyes in that capacity.
Yeah. And I think a big part of it too is the mentality. And I do think Zeev is similar to him in the sense of like when he goes there or gets the chance to put on the Wild jersey, he's not going to be, I hope he's not, because this is what Brock did not do, is be like in awe a little bit and be a little hesitant because like, maybe I don't quite fit yet, or, I'm not, just a little, not quite as confident as he could be or should be, so that's for me is what put him over the edge, is like, he's like, you know what? I'm here. I belong to be here, and I'm gonna be better than most of these guys on the ice, and that's the mentality, and that's how we hope Bouillon does the same exact thing. But I don't think it's that easy to do either. So we'll see.
All right. So I have to ask this. This is a very hypothetical situation. Obviously, that I don't think is possible to ever happen, but. You have one more game in the NHL. You're given one last game in the NHL for one of the 4 teams you played for. Which team are you picking? Who's on your line?
Oof.
And it's the guys that you played with. Like,
not
to put you on blast.
The guys are on my team at that. Yeah. Oh man, that's tough.
Yeah,
that's a hard question.
And we're not here to disrespect anybody he doesn't pick.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say Anaheim is definitely, I would throw that out just because I was only there for a few months and, it wasn't, whatever. It wasn't the most memorable.
I think I know what you're going to say, but I'll let you go. And I'll tell you if I'm wrong.
I mean, Boston, it's tough. Boston, I'm going to throw out just because it was 1 year. It was really 1 year. We had a good team, but it was young. They were young, and most of the guys were. And so that one's out. Nashville, I just have a spot in my heart for just because it was the first team, and it was So I want to say Nashville, but at the end of the day, I mean, Detroit with all those players,
Oh yeah.
I can't. And to say who would be on my line, I guess I could name 10 guys, but I would probably go. Assuming I'm in the right wing, I would probably go. I would tell Datsuk. I'd say, Datsuk, you're going to play the left wing.
Yeah.
Stevie Y is going to go in the middle, and I'll play the right side. That's what And once again, if I really thought about it, I could go with so many other guys. I play with so many.
I would say you have a team full of Hall of Famers to pick from.
Yeah. So I mean, just so many. Just so many.
First of all, I just want to say your selections were exactly what I thought you were going to say. So, with that being, but yeah, like Brian said, you played with you were literally in a locker room full of future Hall of Famers at that time, and now that's just I mean, obviously Datsuk just got in this past year.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even fathom that you got to share locker room with those guys. That's just incredible. And I mean, obviously they weren't Hall of Famers yet, but I mean, guys like Datsuk and Steve Yzer, man, it's just unreal.
Lidstrom.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, so if I had to pick the back end, I would go Lindstrom, Chelios.
There you go. Oh, man. Chelios, what a guy, man. Man, I gotta say too, I mean, obviously it didn't come to fruition because I think you guys lost to Calgary, if I remember correctly. I think you guys got knocked out.
The 2 years I was there and we're in the playoffs, we lost to Edmonton and Calgary.
But I mean, you had a legitimate chance at getting a Stanley Cup with those teams. I mean, those teams were stacked in 2002. They won the cup. So, and that's about where you came in right after that, I believe.
Yeah, right after. Yeah.
So, I mean, you had a legitimate chance at, holy shit, I might actually get a ring.
I know. And I played like 3 playoff games the one year. The next year I was hurt, had a broken foot, but even still, I mean, that's same thing I was thinking, going back to the mentality of Brock Faber, like I wish I would have had that mentality because I was always, not that I was always in, starstruck. It wasn't like that, but it was still like, what the hell am I doing here? Sometimes. Like, Jesus,
it feels surreal. Like you're like, I'm just a guy. Like what?
Yeah.
It's like imposter syndrome.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, those 2 years we won the President's Trophy both years, and we certainly had a chance to go, but that's what happens.
Do you believe in the President's Trophy curse?
I don't know if it's a curse, but it's certainly something to it. I mean, I don't know what it is, but I will say that what you could say is that, and I truly believe this, is there's a team to get. Your team has to be really good to get in the play. There's a regular season team,
and then there's a playoff.
And then there's a playoff team.
100%.
And then there's a team that can do both. That can do both, and that's the goal. So I would say that's more probably what happened than anything else. Is with this curse type thing, is that these teams are regular season teams and they just don't have enough experience yet in the playoffs or whatever. But. So.
Well, if you guys are listening and watching and you want to see what Mark Mowers was capable of, especially on Detroit, go to YouTube and type in Mark Mowers highlight reel goal. It's a game Detroit against Calgary. Absolute beauty of a goal. It's one of my favorite goals to watch on YouTube. Also, in regards to curses and jinxes and stuff, I think I kind of put that whole theory to rest last season when I was obviously rooting for the Panthers in the Stanley Cup final. And the day of game 4, my wife and I were at the Hall of Fame, and I didn't care. I said, I don't care. I don't know if I'm ever going to be here again. I'm going to touch the cup, even though it wasn't the traveling cup. And I touched it. And then the Panthers went out and lost 8-2 that night. And I was like, oh shit, what did I do? But then they ended up still winning the cup. And then as of the beginning of this month, we went to the outdoor series game. And they had the actual Stanley Cup there, and then I was like, "Well, I'm touching it again. Now we won. I don't care."
Yeah,
I made sure to touch it in the Blue Jackets jersey and not my Wild jersey, just in case.
There you go.
Oh, hey man! I mean, even the Wild and the Blue Jackets have, I would say, exceeded expectations this year. Even though the Wild have gone down significantly, but they're plagued by injuries and salary cap hell.
Yeah.
So,
boy, I can't wait to see Kaprizov step back on the ice. Man, I am hurting.
Yeah. Me neither.
I can't wait to see you guys get out of that Ryan Suter and Zach Parise contract.
Oh,
Yeah,
it'll be
man.
interesting. It'll be interesting to see what happens this summer for sure.
Oh
Yeah,
man.
I'm excited.
Well,
The
we're
fan of me wants to text Mao every day, like, "All right, what's on the docket for today?
Yeah.
Please let me know."
Just trying to be the Minnesota Wild version of Elliot Friedman, trying to get his inside connections to hook him up.
Yeah. No, the Wild have Michael Russo for that.
Oh
That's
yeah,
true.
yeah.
So
I met
we
Russo
are.
at Excel Energy Center last season. Great guy.
Yo, you met him?
Yeah,
Who,
he was. We
Brian?
were there for a. It was the season opener, and we were just standing by the entrance. The team was doing this whole walk-in thing, high-fiving everybody, whatever. And he was standing behind me, and they were interviewing Bill Guerin on the radio there. And so Russo was standing next to the table. I turned around. I'm like, "You're Michael Russo." And he goes, "Yeah, I am." I was like, "I love your work." And we chatted for 30 seconds, a minute. But real nice guy, a real forward. So
Yeah.
it's
Lucky.
cool.
Cool.
You know what? I had a similar experience like that, though. I did meet Andy Brickley on the club level of TD
Yes,
Garden
you did.
when we were there in 20. I remember I texted you and I was like, dude, I met Andy Brickley. And you kind of shrugged it off because you thought I was bullshitting you. And then I sent you a picture. That's arguably my favorite hockey moment. At least
cool.
for in person, was meeting Andy Brickley. What a great guy.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
My wife got to high five Marc-Andre Fleury, so her NHL moment was much cooler than mine.
She's good to go now. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you were touched by greatness at that
she
point.
she loves some flour. I think we all do, though.
Well, we're hitting that hour mark, and I know you have obligations to attend to.
Yeah, but if you got any more quick shot questions, go for it. It's up to
Brian,
you.
I just want to make sure Brian's not missing out because I kind of hogged the show last time. And I feel like I've kind of done it again, but I just, I'm trying not to steal from him.
No, most of the questions I want to ask Mark are about the Wild, and they're things that he probably can't answer because they're too prying. So I'm like, I just need to leave those alone. But the big thing for me was just knowing how things kind of went down on deadline day. And I know, obviously, again, as you mentioned this year for the Wild, with the injuries and not having any cap room, it kind of left them strapped. But I always like to know the inner workings of the league. I'm kind of a nerd for all that logistical stuff.
Mhm.
So that was the big thing for me. But just getting to talk to you again and having you back on was an absolute joy. I love when we get to talk to people inside of the business who understand this game and really know it well, because as much as we like to come on here and talk about it, we're just a couple of guys. So having somebody with real experience playing, scouting, it's I feel very fortunate that we get to have you on here and have you as a friend.
No, I appreciate that. And I'll add one more thing to that whole scouting thing. And I don't know if you saw the quote from Bill Zito, but if you haven't, you should look it up. But someone just asked him they asked him the same question, like, how was deadline day? And you got this done with Marchand, whatever. And he said something like, you know what? We'll be in that room and we got however many guys, and we sometimes almost have fist fights. But at the end of the day, it's a bunch of guys that just really care about the Florida Panthers. And so that can happen too, where there's major arguments and you hate one guy because you want to trade for this guy and you don't want to give up this or that or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's really the GM just sitting back, listening and getting information from everybody in that room. And then he makes the best decision he can with the information that's in front of him. And that's how it should work. You always want to get along and everybody agree and have the same whatever, but really it's not going to happen. And it's up for the big guy. He's the one that has to make the decision. And the more info you give him, the better. So
I do have one last question that I want to ask you. How, and maybe it'll turn into 9 questions. I don't fucking know.
That's
we'll
okay.
See. As a pro scout now, and I'm only asking this because I have a family member of mine who's a pro scout in the NFL. How involved or uninvolved are you with training camp and guys making the team or not making the team or certain prospect? I don't know how involved are you directly with training camp?
I would say I've worked for 3 teams.
Mm-hmm.
And my involvement is 0.01%.
Holy shit. No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, that really goes to show you how much it differs in different sports too. That's pretty incredible.
And I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm not saying, I wouldn't want to be more involved in it. It's just the way that it's been done, at least on the teams that I'm with. So
Now, and I think I asked you this last show, but I'm going to be 100% honest, I forgot. How often you're a pro scout, so I know you're mainly going to NHL games to scout. Do you do any scouting at minor league games?
Yeah. So you did ask that question the last time.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
I was saying, I don't know. I would have 100% believed you.
Yeah, no. So yeah, I do both. We do both. We do. I would say it's 60% NHL, 40% AHL.
Okay, that's okay. So that's pretty good.
But there are some teams as well, and I think LA might be one of them. They have separate scouts that do the minor leagues. So they have
okay.
So they'll have NHL like scouts, and then they have some guys that just do minor league games. I don't really like that. I don't like it. I like to. I'd rather have, which I've told you, like I have a team. I have 10 teams, and I have their affiliates, or 9 teams, because I like to see guys get called up, go back down, how they do. You know what I mean? And you just have a book on those guys rather than. You know, if you're just doing American League, you don't know how they did when they get called up, other than, the scout that you can call the scout that watched them, but how do maybe he doesn't like the way the kid plays, and
Right.
you do like the way he plays. So it can, for me, I'm not a huge fan of it doing it that way.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Also, Brian, I just realized next time, assuming that Mark ever wants to come back again,
Of course.
next time we have to have Ben Polacco on here with Mark, because Ben would be. I don't know if you've seen the episodes where we've had Ben on here, but Ben is also a hockey encyclopedia, and I know he would. He's real good dude. I mean,
cool. Yeah. No. That's good with me. Yeah.
Yeah, he would.
Sure.
I know he's got some questions he would probably love to ask you, and he's a big Blue Jackets guy because he's from around here, but he played college and junior hockey as well. So
okay, good. Yeah.
Yeah, he was actually the first guest of any type that we ever had on this show, and very much like you, he's become a close friend of the show. And I think the next time we all get together, it should be the 4 of us. I think that would be a killer conversation.
Good. That sounds good to me. That sounds good.
I got one more for you, Mal, before we let you go that I think would be a great one. All hockey fans can relate to this. So,
go ahead.
Obviously, any hockey fan will tell you that most intermission interviews are the same thing. It's the guy saying, "Yeah, we got to stick to our game, get the pucks in deep." Yeah. As a former player, how extensive is your media training, and is it at any level enjoyable, or is it just something you go through so you can be playing in the league and doing these interviews?
So there's really not a lot of training. There's not. I don't remember doing any training. Maybe there's more now. I'm not sure, but
I'm sure there is now.
Talk with the young kids now, because and again, a lot of these guys come in when they're 18, 19, so maybe that's why. But you hear the stories about it, but I'm like, God, every intermission interview is, we like the way we started, or we didn't like the way we started. We got to be more aggressive, hound the puck a little more, get it deep, that kind of thing. And I'm like, these guys go through training. Are they really taught to just say the same 3 things?
Yeah. So I would say this. I would say that as a player, especially if you're just a lower tier player in the NHL, whatever that may mean, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think it was a big deal, because you're not asked that often. You might do 4 a year, you know what I mean? So it's not that big a deal. It's not that big a deal you answering them. Like, now as a fan, like what you're talking about, and as a scout, and when I watch and like games, I'm like, oh my God, this is painful. Like, what do you think the guy's gonna say? You know what I mean? Like, so I think it's more frustrating and annoying as a fan and watching it from the TV or whatever than it is as a player answering them, unless you're a star player that does a lot of interviews. I feel the same way about the coaches having to do the post-game Q&A every game. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, it's like the same.
Now that Tortorella's fired, we don't even get the good sound bites.
Yeah. It's the same thing. It's the same, you know what I mean? And they want the information. They want the information that you're not going to give them.
Right.
And then they get mad at you because you don't give it to them. But it's just like, it's mind-boggling to me that they still do that same setup after games. And like you said, because I've talked to Andrew Raycroft, because he plays in some alumni games, and I'm like,
oh yeah,
I'm like, Razor, like, are you sick of asking the same questions? Like,
No
you guys,
shit.
hey, you're down 2-0. What are you gonna do next period to turn the boys around? It's like, yeah, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. It's like,
Yeah.
really?
Well, and that's one thing I forgot to. You used to work for Nesson, correct?
Yeah, for 1 year.
Yeah, you were an analyst.
Yes.
So, okay, I do. Okay, so I was right in that. And I don't know if Razor still is, but he definitely
Yeah,
was.
he is. He still
He's
does it.
between the glass now, is he not?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like, how do you not get burnt out? I love Razor as an analyst. I
Yeah,
think he's a
good.
phenomenal analyst. And I'm
Yeah, he
also
does good.
grateful for him because had it not been for him, the Bruins would have never gotten Tuukka Rask. So thank you, Razor.
There you
I'm
go.
sure he loves hearing that, but
There you
that's
go.
okay.
Yeah.
But I love Razor. He's a phenomenal analyst. I think he's one in a million. Again, you just wonder how the reporters have to get tired of asking the questions just as much as the players do answering them.
Yeah. Even that 1 year I did because I just did intermission, pregame and intermission. So I didn't really ever, occasionally we had to ask questions after the game and the guys had the headsets on. And
Yeah.
I remember, I think it was Kevin Miller, maybe, that I had to do one day, but I was thinking, like, what am I going to ask these guys? It's terrible.
So that's actually what I was going to ask next. The questions that they ask, are those questions scripted, or is that just shit that the guy's coming up with right on the spot?
I think sometimes the guys in the truck or whatever you want to call them will feed them with, like, say, like, this was a big part that happened in the first period. Like, maybe ask them that. Like, they try, I think, to give them some, but I also think Razor sometimes has to probably come up with his own ideas on, like, what to ask him. I don't know that, but I assume that it's kind of a little bit of both.
Well, next time you talk to Razor, tell him I love his analyst stuff. It's great. So. Not that he's gonna care about a guy like me, but
yeah, you will. Yeah, you will.
I'm sure he will. I'm sure he's a great guy.
Yeah.
But I think that puts me out of questions. Brian, how you doing?
I'm good. I think we touched on everything I wanted to get to today, and I had a blast doing it. I just wish eventually we will get this lined up where I'm not having any hardware issues when we have Mao on the show. But
hey, third time's the charm.
I'm sticking with you. With you, bro.
Yeah. Hey, I just got to say, we're just two nobodies that decided to do a podcast because we love talking hockey. And I mean, to you and the Warrior for Life Fund, I can't express how much gratitude I have for you for just being willing to come on our show and talk hockey with us. And I mean, we've become friends since, and I'm also very grateful for your friendship. But for two guys who I would argue don't deserve this, we're very grateful to you and the Warrior for Life Fund. And obviously you're welcome on this show anytime. I think you know that.
We will do it again. We will do it again. And kudos to you guys for doing it. I mean, like, if nothing else, I thought about it the other day. I was like, you know what? Most people would have been like, that's crazy. Why would we, but it keeps you guys, in touch too. Like, it's a great, you don't live that far from each other, but even still, it doesn't mean you have enough time to sit down and really talk about hockey, and you know what I mean? And it's a passion of yours. So, kudos to you guys for starting and keeping it going, because I think it's good for everybody. It really is.
Yeah. Also, I just want to point out the episode we had you on last time still remains, maybe until now, our most downloaded episode. So
that was probably just because of the Babcock conversation.
Hey, that was a hot topic. Let me tell you about the feedback I got on that, man. That's why I was like, oh, I could make a whole episode out of this, but we're not going to go down that road right now.
Well, if this one doesn't reach that level, we're going to have to go back into it, because
don't threaten me with a good time, man. I'll call you back tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next episode will be titled Mark Mowers Hates Mike Babcock.
Yeah. Maybe we won't title it that.
Oh, man.
We won't do clickbaity headlines.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Well, no, I don't think we need to. That's the other thing that keeps us going is, we do get a decent amount of, we get a couple thousand downloads per episode.
Awesome.
So it's done far better than I ever expected it to. And I know Brian and I are just grateful for that, but it's certainly not possible without you, without Albie, without Bob, without the Warrior for Life Fund. That's why we love you guys so much.
Yeah.
Aside from what you guys do, you guys have really helped us out too. And we were just two brothers that started a random hockey podcast. So we will always appreciate you. And we always look forward to talking to you, man.
Awesome. It's been a great fit.
All right. Well, we're going to let Mark get on out of here. And Brian and I are going to take our first break. So, Mark, we'll see you next time. Everybody stick with us. This is the Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast. It's hockey season, and you're looking to work on your stick handling or maybe even your shot, but ice time just isn't an option for you right now. Luckily, our buddies over at Xenopucks have got you covered. They've developed an elite off-ice practice puck that, in addition to looking like the real thing, is the same size and weight as a regulation hockey puck to give you that authentic feel on the end of your stick. It works better than other off-ice practice pucks on almost any surface, whether you use it on hardwood, carpet, concrete, or even asphalt. Xenopucks glide like a real puck on ice. So if you're looking to improve your game without setting foot on the ice, head over to www.xenopucks.com and get yourself a puck. Check out their merch selection and be sure to follow them on Instagram at Xenopucks. All right, and we're back. Thank you, as always, to our good friend Stephen Carter of Xenopucks. Literally the best off-ice practice puck money can buy. Also, a special thanks again to Mark Mowers for joining the show. Any opportunity we get to sit down and talk with Mow is always appreciated. It's always a good time. He's super knowledgeable. Obviously, he's a former player. We just love talking to him. So big shout out to Mark. With that being said, we still have a few things to go over. Nothing too big this week, but just some things we want to touch on. I hogged most of the spotlight this episode, so I'm going to let Brian kind of carry us from here.
Well, and part of it had to do with my internet, but literally, and I can't make this up. As soon as we cut the broadcast with Mao, I went and checked on my router, and now my internet's back online. So now the connection's a little crisper, the video's coming in a little clearer on my end, and so all the troubles I had to start the show, I no longer have. The timing couldn't be worse, but the show must go on. All right, so moving forward now, the Lady Badgers team, the Wisconsin Badgers, won the women's NCAA tournament. So congratulations to them. It was a crazy game against Ohio State. They get that penalty shot goal late to tie it up, and then they win in overtime. So great season for them. It's a great program, the men's and women's programs there. I know the men's team didn't have the season they would have liked this year, but again, the women's team brings home a national championship. As for the men's NCAA tournament, that is still underway. National championship for that tournament will be April the 12th. That'll be an exciting one. There's already been a lot of really great games in this tournament. Unfortunately for me, the Gophers really blew a big lead and got knocked out. But so far, these tournaments have both been really exciting hockey to watch. So it'll be exciting to watch what's left of the men's tournament as they get towards the Frozen Four.
Yes, sir. And I just wanted to say that penalty shot goal in that Badgers game was a thing of absolute
whole
beauty.
Scenario, the coach asking who wants it, and just everything about it. The coach said, he goes, I closed my eyes after she said she was taking the shot. I just didn't want to look. So I thought that was funny, but a great win for a great program. And yeah, we'll see what happens to the men's tournament. There's so many good teams in right now, and I think I would like to see Denver get it just because of the Wild having Zev Boyum on there. I'd like to see him get another national championship in his college career, but we'll have to see. Time will tell. So
yes, sir.
Moving forward, we talked about the Blues on our last episode and how they were really starting to heat up. Well, that's since translated into a 9-game win streak, and they're now
they're
one of the
hot
best teams in the league. Yeah, they are red hot. We said we'd talk about them if they stayed hot, and did they ever stay hot? So the Blues are rolling now. They are tied with the Wild in points for the top wild card spot, but the Wild have played one fewer game. So it's right now the Wild are 1 and the Blues are 2 in the wild card standings. But with this pace St. Louis is on, I mean, there's a chance we could talk about them sliding into a divisional spot. So they're playing really well. This is eerily similar to the run they had in 2019 when they won the Stanley Cup. I don't know that this team is necessarily constructed as well for a deep playoff run as the 2019 team was, but they still have the same goalie who's capable, as we've seen now, of winning big games. He's good at proving the haters wrong, which is unfortunate because I don't like him. But
Yeah, I would say I'm the hater.
They have great coaching. They have a goalie who's won a cup, can play in big games. And so they might not be the absolute force they were in 2019 on paper, but this is still a very talented team. The only roadblock they're really going to have this time around is every other team in the Western Conference that's going to be in the playoffs is really good. So, I mean, this time of year in the playoffs, everybody's good, but this year everybody really loaded up in the West. So St. Louis will have their hands full, but they've done everything right to get to where they are between the coaching change, Bennington catching fire, the team playing well, more structured game. Again, they go up against one of those horses last night in Colorado, and they didn't blow them out of the building, but they won 2-1 regulation win. They held them off, and again, even a good game defensively from Colorado, but it just wasn't enough. And St. Louis all of a sudden is looking like a real serious team, but time will tell. But it's definitely, again, it is very similar to how things went when they won the Stanley Cup last time.
Yeah, I was just going to say it. Everything that they're doing now is reminding me very much of 2019, which I don't like to think about. And as much as it absolutely kills me to say it, I have to give commendations to Jordan Bennington. As much as I can't stand him, he's playing out of his mind. So it just is what it is. But the Blues look unstoppable, as you mentioned. The West is going to be an entire juggernaut this playoffs. So I mean, last year the East was favored highly in the playoffs. I think this year it's going to be more so the Western Conference. Everybody's dangerous in the West. I mean, you got your dangerous teams in the East. You got Florida, Tampa, Washington. I'll even throw Toronto in there, even though I think they're a bunch of frauds. So, but I think it's going to go to the
Carolina.
West.
I'd put Toronto in there before Carolina.
Oh yeah, I'm not putting Carolina in there. Hell no. They are frauds. I think Toronto just struggles with that first round. I think if they can get past the first round, they'll be okay. But I digress back to the Blues. I think I'm interested to see if this is just one of those hot streaks or if this is going to be like 2019 where they just fucking turned it around and didn't look back. So,
yeah. Again, my big concern for the Blues is just the I don't want to say lack of talent because it's a talented group. I mean, you think of guys like Kyrou and Neighbors and Braden Shen. Like there's talent there, but again, they don't. No Pietrangelo, no O'Reilly, no Tarasenko in his prime. Like there are for those of you who are listening, and we're on video, and Andrew does not like when I play with my beard, even though he is the king of fucking around with his beard. So, but yeah, he's not just saying that because he's a maniac. It's just been a decade of me always fucking around with my beard.
But also, I am a maniac.
But anyways, I don't think this is good as the one they won the cup with, but it might not have to be either. If Bennington stands on his head and they get the great defensive efforts they've been getting, it might not matter. So only time will tell, but it's definitely worth keeping an eye on the Blues as they are really, really putting it together at the right time.
Yep, and that honestly, that's all that matters.
Yep, yeah, it's timing is everything when it comes to a championship run. We talked with Mao about the President's Trophy curse, and I don't even know that it is a curse. I just think, again, it comes down to who's hot at the right time and who's not. I mean, these teams that win the President's Trophy are usually great the whole season, but sometimes you run out of gas in the playoffs, or sometimes one of your rare cold stretches just happens to fall in the playoffs, and that's what it is. I mean, it's just the way it goes. Look at all those Caps teams that won President's Trophies that didn't go far. The Bruins President's Trophy team from a couple years ago, same thing. Yep. The Bruins President's Trophy team from like 2013 or 2014, kind of the same thing. They ran into Montreal, who Carey Price just is. It just happened. So timing is everything, and right now the Blues have got it.
Yep. Yeah, that's all right.
We'll see. Right. Yeah, again, time will tell, but yeah, again, they're definitely doing the right thing at the right time of the year. Who is somebody who's not doing the right thing is John Tortorella, as he has now been relieved of his duties as the head coach of the Philadelphia Flyers. And It is what it is. I don't entirely agree with the firing, but the results haven't been great for Philly. I also don't think the team is structured that well. They don't have goaltending. They really don't have a lot of scoring talent. There's not much there, and I think it's a situation where the easy scapegoat is the coach because it hasn't been going great, and the Flyers haven't played his system very effectively. But who knows? Who knows? Maybe we've seen the last of Torts in the NHL. Maybe we haven't. But if we have seen the last of him as an NHL head coach, we've definitely enjoyed his sound bites over the years.
We have, and I've been very vocal on the show. I do love Torts, but I do also believe that his coaching style is outdated at this point. And like I mentioned to you earlier, this wasn't on the show, but I had said to you, I think earlier this week, he's got like a 2-year shelf life as a coach. And then it's kind of all downhill from there. And I think it's just because the players get tired of him. But then you hear guys who have played for him, like when we had Albie on the show last year, and he talked about what a great guy Torts is, like on a personal level with his players. He's just very, very aggressive during the game. So it's hard to see what went wrong there. And like what I think, like what you said, the easy scapegoat is the coach in those situations. So, but the Flyers have far bigger fish to fry than their coaching. Like you mentioned, they're short on goaltending. There's just bigger holes to fill there. I don't completely agree with the Torts move or the Torts firing, unless there was stuff going on that we don't know about, like there was legitimately problems in the locker room or something like that.
Well, and there could be, but I just think for Philly, again, a lot of things have just not gone their way for the last couple of years. All the stuff with Carter Hart and his ongoing case he's dealing with, and they've really not been able to find a solid solution in goal. The lack of high-end goal-scoring talent has really killed them. There's not a lot going right for them right now. I know they're working on building something great, and I think having a young, talented player like Mishkov will certainly help, but one guy's not going to be the whole show. I mean, even McDavid's first few years in Edmonton, there was a little bit of some growing pains. I mean, they were certainly immediately better with him, but there is a path that needs to be followed to get to success. But for the Flyers, I just think the overall lack of talent on the roster has just killed them. And for Torts, a guy who needs a full buy-in from every single player on the ice, I just don't think it was there for them. And the results clearly showed that. But I also don't think firing him is going to solve anything for them. You may see a little bit of a boost towards the end of the season here, because a lot of times teams perform better for the couple weeks following a coach's firing, because the players are like, well, sometimes it seems that the players are like, all right, this is on us. We needed to be better, and we got him fired, so now we need to play better. But for Philly, there's too much, or there's too little, again, high-end talent there for me to have any belief in them that they'll be back in this next year, which is a shame, because going into this year, it looked like they were maybe starting to figure things out, and then with Mishkov coming in, maybe that would kind of provide the spark they need. And it did a little at first, but it really fell off, and they never gained any traction as far as their position in the standings.
Yeah, I agree. So, I mean, I'm interested to see. I forgot who the interim head coach is for Philly right now. It's not important. I'm interested
either.
Yeah, I mean, it's their assistant coach, or was their assistant coach, I guess. But I mean, I'm interested to see where they go in the offseason, who they bring in to fill that role. There's not a lot of big names out there as far as coaches go right now.
John Tortorella.
Yeah, that's the big one. Yeah. Other than that, I mean, who else?
Yeah, I mean, big fish. Yeah, that's
are you bringing up a coach from the minors at this point, or are you bringing? Are you just promoting an assistant coach and just leaving it at that?
I would say there will be options, but yeah, I don't. Again, are any of them going to be any better than Torts? I don't know. It seemed kind of silly. The timing doesn't seem great either. I'm like, this close to the end of the year, let's just ride it out with them. But I guess they figure, with it being a guarantee that they're not going to make the playoffs, they figure bring in the next guy and start, I guess, trying to change. I don't even know if changing the culture is the right word, because I don't think it's even a culture issue there. I think it's just a lack of talent issue. I don't think they're addressing the right thing with this firing. So we'll see. We'll see how Philly does in the summer. We'll see what they do at the draft. I mean, a good offseason could quickly turn things around for them, but not having a real solution in net and having one guy that's an elite goal scorer is not going to help.
I would just like to point out to everybody too, I wish that we were at a point with the show when I'm producing it where we put the actual names of the segments in the show with the timestamps, because Brian appropriately named this segment Tata Torts. So I just thought that was a great name for the segment. Well,
Quick goodbye.
There is one thing that you have on here that I really have been anxious to talk about.
Is it the Avalanche or is it the Blue Jackets?
It is the Avalanche.
All right. Now when I made my show notes for this, and if you're watching this on video, you're going to see my hands popping up on the screen because I'm doing this all on my phone because I've been having some random internet issues. So I got to look up the stat line here. So while I'm looking this up, actually, let's do our Blue Jackets segment now, because the Jackets have kind of recovered a little bit. They're in the mix for the playoffs. They're just on the outside looking in behind the Rangers, tied with Montreal, but don't have the tiebreaker. I mean, they're close. And again, Monahan just came back, and that should give them a boost, hopefully. And Cole Sillinger, I believe, is coming back soon, isn't he?
Yes, they just reactivated him.
So, I mean, there is a chance here. Look, there's still enough games left in the season. They're in an appropriate spot in the standings where it's essentially their fate is still in their hands. I mean, I don't technically believe it is at this exact second, but unless the Rangers and Montreal are perfect the rest of the year, I would think that their fate could very well still be in their hands. So they're going to get the boost they need. They're going to have a chance to go down these last few games and fight with their full roster. And given how they've ended up, I mean, who knows? It's anybody's guess. Tarasov's last few starts have been unwatchable. And even Elvis the other night giving up 6 against Vancouver was unbelievable too. But they won that game at least. But yeah, now the Jackets, look, it's not a perfect scenario for them right now. But again, they've ultimately put themselves into a position where they are going to decide their own fate, really. It'll come down to how well they play. I think they can play better than the Rangers. I think they can play better than Montreal. Given what they've done this year with a healthy team, I don't think it's unreasonable to expect them to make the playoffs, even though it looked like it was slipping away from them just a couple of weeks ago.
Well, and regardless, I've said this before on this show, the Blue Jackets aren't even supposed to be here right now. They've already far exceeded everybody's expectations. But being that they have a chance to make it right now, you need your goaltending to step up. And it's no surprise to anyone that Tarasov's starts have been a disaster. They typically are. Elvis, sure, they won the game against Vancouver the other night. You still gave up 6 goals, and that's a problem. I don't care if you came away with the win. You can't be letting in 6 goals. Granted, okay, so you got a team that can score. Well, obviously letting in 6 goals wasn't 100% Elvis's fault. A large part of it was, but you need your defense to step up too. So there's still some things that the Jackets have to work on as a whole here. But overall, as far as the season goes, there's no reason for anyone to be mad if they miss it. But at the same time, you're so close right now. If you can get your goaltending to step up, you might be all right.
So we were at the Monsters game last night, and that didn't go very well for us. You want to talk about that a little bit and the struggles they've had seemingly the last, 2 months?
Yeah, I'd absolutely love to drag the Monsters right now, even though I sit here wearing a Monsters hat. Look, their performance the last month and a half has just been nothing short of an atrocity, and it's inexcusable. I haven't seen them win a game at home since February 1st. Now, it's worth noting they have won a game at home. I just wasn't there for it. It was when we were in Columbus for the Stadium Series game. They have looked terrible. Something's missing, especially compared to last season. Their biggest issue right now, and there's no debating it, this team is extremely undisciplined and cannot stay out of the box. When you have the same exact guy, multiple players going to the box multiple times in a game, that is a problem. Joseph Labate last night goes to the box twice for 2 different penalties. Trey Fix-Wolanski is their star player. He's routinely in the box 2 or 3 times a game at home. And the biggest problem is you're getting these huge sellout crowds in a 19,000 person arena, and you're going out and losing every time in front of these sellout crowds. That's how you stop getting sellout crowds. It's become such a problem. There's so many things they need to fill in. Zach Sawchenko is not it as a backup goaltender. I'm sorry, he's just not. He gets filled in every time. Jets, for the most part, is a great goalie, and I think he has a future in the NHL. He just needs some more development. He's very young. By the way, today is Jet Greaves' birthday, so happy birthday to Jet. I believe he is 24. With that being said, this is a very undisciplined team, and it shows on the ice. There's a lot of passing the puck around, not really setting up any plays. They're just kind of passing it around, hoping a lane opens up for them to fire it in there. But it's just their power play is weak. They never do anything on the power play. Their penalty kill is at best is average, which isn't okay given how much they go to the box. I could sit here and tear this team apart, and it sucks because I absolutely love them and I love going to the games. But this has been ridiculous. This last month is just inexcusable.
Yeah, I mean it's tough to watch. The last two games we've been to, they've scored a combined 1 goal. So it's not been great. We went a couple of weeks ago, and then we went obviously last night. They get shut out a couple weeks ago, and then 1 goal last night. And just after the second period, really a very limited effort. Their only great looks in the third were on the power play, and so it's been kind of an uninspiring effort from them, I feel like. And again, the discipline's a huge issue. And Trey Fix-Wolanski, his biggest downfall as a player is being a smaller guy. He gets picked on a lot on the ice, and his response is always just so over the top that even when the other guy gets called for a penalty, like last night, guy gets called for roughing, he turns and decks him in the face and gets his own roughing to match it. So, and I'm not saying it's easy to not retaliate in a situation like that, especially when the refs refuse to put their fucking arm up until there is the retaliation. So I can level with that. But when you know that's going to be the case, you have to dig deep and find the way to restrain yourself. Because if you can go to the power play, again, get yourself some better scoring chances, you'd be much better off.
Well, and one thing I want to point out is AHL referees are the embodiment of blind referees. Officiating in the AHL is horrendous.
Yeah, it is.
And it always seems very one-sided. And I'm not trying to sound like one of those fans that, oh, it's always my team that gets penalized. Look, the Monsters deserve every penalty they get most of the time because, like I said, and like you pointed out with Trey Fix-Wolanski overreacting to the smallest thing, they're a very undisciplined team. But at the same time, there were some horrendously obvious missed calls last night, primarily a tripping penalty that should have been called against Texas right after Cleveland pulled the goalie. It's just things like that where the whole arena can see it, but it's not getting called. And that's what's frustrating. And I'm not saying that the Monsters should be relying on missed calls to go their way in order to win games. No, that's not true. You need to buckle down on the ice. You need your defense to step up. You need your goaltenders to stand tall in net, and they're just not getting that. But the biggest thing for this team right now is the unnecessary amount of penalties that they take. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair. It'll be interesting to see how they close out the season, but with how stacked the East will be in the AHL playoffs, I don't think the Monsters have a chance, even if they get in, quite frankly.
No, this isn't the same team as last year.
Hershey's still so good. Toronto's having a pretty good season. I just think there's too many good teams in the mix in the East for them to really have a good shot at doing any kind of damage in the playoffs. It just, the goaltending has been okay, but yeah, the scoring has been very hard to come by for them. And again, being in the same division as a team like Hershey, there's just you have to be able to score at will, or you'll never keep up. Especially in the AHL with the style of play, you'll never keep up.
Right. That's enough on that, though. I could sit here and drag that on all day. So.
All right. Well, you got that out of our systems. I want to close the show by kind of posing a question here, and I really want everybody listening to this to really kind of have a real critical thinking approach to this, because on the surface it may seem silly or stupid or whatever you might call it, but just looking at stat lines and the way the game is now and the style that it's played and how much tighter the checking is and stuff than it really used to be, or not how much tighter the checking is, how much faster the game's pace is. I want to pose a question. if the Avalanche win the Stanley Cup this year, next year, whenever, and Cale Makar continues to produce at the level he's producing at, when are we going to start having a conversation that this guy might be one of the best defensemen, if not the best defenseman of all time? Now, on the surface, that seems extremely outlandish. You look at the three big ones people think of right away: Bork, Orr, and Lidstrom. All outstanding players, easily the best three defenders of all time as things sit at this exact moment. I mean, Lidstrom won how many Stanley Cups with Detroit? I think he was there for all four of them. And then Orr obviously won the two with the Bruins, and Bork played forever and finally got his one with the Avalanche as well. Those are all great players, but you look at Cale Makar, you look at his skill level, you look at the style the game is now, how much better the goalies are, and you look at the fact that he's over a point a game still as a defenseman in a league that's the scoring is mostly dominated by the forwards, but for him to essentially he's so fast. He gets down the ice that he can jump into almost any rush he wants to and still have the legs to get back and defend. I mean, his overall skill set, his speed, his shot, his playmaking ability rivals that of the best defenders of all time, like Orr, like Lidstrom, like Bork, all these guys that are absolute legends in their own right. And for Makar, he's got just the one championship, and I know Bork had just the one championship, but I truly think, and it's hard to compare it because these guys have been legends for so long. Lidstrom to a lesser extent because he's more recently retired than the other two. But I think we really need to start looking at, okay, is Cale Makar really one of the best defensemen of all time? Because the more I watch him, and obviously him being on a rival team, I see him play a few times a year. Plus I watch a few Avs games myself. And he's just so much better than everybody else on the ice. I really think another championship under his belt will really start to solidify him among the all-time greats. You know, when I wrote the notes out, I asked the question, is he the best defender of all time? I don't know if we're ready to have that talk yet, but just if he continues at this pace, he's only 26 years old, I think, which is mind-boggling. But if he continues at this pace throughout his career, by the time we're all said and done, it's really going to be hard to say that he's not one of the best of all time. I mean, we're looking at a guy, realistically, in my mind, who's going to finish his career as one of the top 5 defensemen to ever play this game.
I don't disagree with you. I think it's a little early to have that conversation now, like you said, but I definitely give it 5 more years. I think that's going to be something everybody's talking about. I mean, the big factor is you need the guy to stay healthy. If he stays healthy, continues to produce at the rate he does, you absolutely are having this conversation. To which I would say you're having the conversation of, is he the best of all time as far as defenders go? I would say, yeah. I mean, he's just such an offensive juggernaut for being a defenseman. His speed is insane. He's not your typical defenseman. That's why he's so great. The thing is, he's first, at least barring some drastic collapse, he's going to be on the Colorado Avalanche for his whole career. I guarantee it. I don't ever see him leaving Colorado, which is good.
Yeah, and he's going to be getting he's going to get a big payday.
He's going to get a huge payday, but to your point of, if the Colorado Avalanche win a cup again with him, is he in the conversation? Yes, because if they do win a cup again in the near future, he's going to be a very massive part of the reason why. You don't win a cup in that organization right now without Cale Makar. It's the same thing. And you could argue that without McKinnon. You know, they haven't seen Landeskog in 3 years, obviously, but that team is still a good team, but it's not happening without Makar. It's just not.
No, it's definitely not. And that's why I'm like, this guy, he's such a driving force in every single game. His impact is just unbelievable. And I mean, it's not that I'm not saying like he's underrated or anything. I mean, I just think even as much as we talk about him and his skill, I still think that it's still not quite appreciated enough, the impact he has on every single game the Avalanche play. I just think, and it's harder to notice each game because he's in the lineup every game and he's playing well. But if he misses games, that's where you'll start to see, okay, all of a sudden 25, 30 minutes a night are disappearing and being spread out among guys that aren't him. And all of a sudden you start to notice the difference in defensive quality. And I'm not saying they're useless without him, but they are unbelievably unstoppable with him. So yeah, I think it's time to start giving the guy the flowers he deserves. I mean, he receives high praise as it is, but we really need to start putting this guy in the tiers that we put Crosby and McDavid and McKinnon into. I mean, those guys are going to be all-time greats too, but I think Makar needs to be right up there with him. I mean, truthfully, he's just that good. And it surprises me that it's not talked about even more. And I think if he played on a team that was in the East, I think he would. If he was on a Montreal or a Toronto or a New York or Washington or somebody like that, or Boston or whatever, you can pick any of those old teams out in the East. I think you would not hear this. You would never stop hearing his name. But he probably only has to play. He has to play like 3 or 4 more seasons to pass Bobby Orr for games played. And his point per game rate isn't much farther behind Bobby's. Bobby finished his career with like a 1.5 points per game, and Makar is like 1.1 points per game right now. So, I mean, it's not an unclosable gap or anything like that. But again, given the era that they're playing in now, where the goalies are much better, for Makar to be doing this, I would say it's equally as impressive. And it's not to take away anything that Bobby Orr did or Nick Lidstrom or Ray Bork or any of those guys did, or you can even talk about like an Al McInnes or someone. It's not to take away from anything any of those guys did. Makar is just this good, and I don't think it's talked about enough.
I agree with you, and it's not even that he's underrated. It's just that he's not talked about enough. I think everybody truly realizes that this is a once in a generation player, and what you're watching is not the norm, but I just don't feel like it's talked about enough.
Yep. So I wanted everybody to kind of chew on that a little bit before we go here and kind of think about that, and make sure you get your questions in for our next episode. We are quickly approaching the playoffs. I think we have 3 weeks left of the regular season, something like that, 2.5 weeks, whatever it is. So our playoff preview show will be quickly approaching, and as we get set to wrap up what's been another very fun season of NHL hockey. But yeah, get those questions in, kind of think about what I said here. And I want to hear some feedback from listeners. I want to hear what you guys think. I don't think anybody's going to respond and say, this guy, he's not that good. But I do want to think, is anybody else out there kind of in the same boat? Like, we need to start treating this guy one of the greats of all time already, or is that too soon?
I think it might just be a little too soon, but it's definitely on the horizon for sure. Give me a second here because I'm counting something real quick, so just bear with me.
All right. This is great radio too. It would help if we knew what you were counting.
According to my math, this is the 50th episode of the Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast.
Is it really?
It sure looks like. That's what I'm saying. It feels like it's been 1,000. We took the summer off.
Summer too. Yeah. Okay, that's right. Well, happy 50th show anniversary or whatever.
Yeah, I suppose show anniversary. Yeah, I don't.
So.
Yeah, all episodes, 50 episodes. That's wild.
Well, we definitely appreciate. It is fitting that we had a guest on for our 50th episode. Then,
yes.
For all of you who have tuned into this show and listened to us in our insanity for the last year and some change now, we're obviously always extremely grateful that you're here each and every week with us and willing to put up with our crap on the weeks we're not here, because life is thrown, various circumstances at us where we just can't record every week, even though we would like to. So, we're always very grateful to you guys for listening. We're super grateful for Xenopucks for sponsoring our show. Thanks to all the guests we've had on too. And again, thanks to Mark Mowers for coming on today. It's always great to have him on, and can't wait to have him on again. Hopefully before too long here. Obviously we want to have Bob Pizzini back on, and Andrew Alberts and Ben Polacco. We want to get them on. And so we're just super fortunate to be in the spot we're in with this show.
Absolutely. It's weird that it's already been 50 episodes, even though it feels like it's been a lot more. So I'm grateful every day for what this show has brought to us and things we've gotten to do because of this show. It's been fun. So here's to another 50.
That's right. So we will see you guys. We should be back next week with no issues. Hopefully my internet's fully cooperating next week. We'll see what happens. But regardless, we are excited again as the season wraps up. So get those questions into us. Get a little bit of feedback, and we will talk to you guys next week.
Yeah, make sure you want to send those questions to us. You can send them over to freshicehockeypodcast@gmail.com or contact at freshicehockeypodcast.com. And as always, be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast. You can follow us on TikTok now at Fresh Ice Pod, and you can follow us on X now at the Fresh Ice Pod. Everybody have a great week, and we will see you next Monday.